Well, welcome to our REBA Thought Leaders video. I'm here today with Jeanette Makings and Professor Cary Cooper. Welcome and thank you very much for joining me today.
Great to be here.
Oh, good to be here. Thanks, Maggie.
So I'd like to start off with talking about some of the general trends in well-being that you're seeing and what do you think are driving them?
Okay, well-being is becoming a much more strategic issue. What's driving it? Poor sickness absence rates, particularly stress-related sickness absence, anxiety, depression, 57% of all the sickness absence, poor performance by British industry. And the reason I say that is because we're 7th in the G7 and 17th in the G20 on productivity per capita, labor turnover, in other words, losing good talent. So that's another big driver. In fact, I think that's one of the biggest drivers, particularly for HR and occupational health. But what I mean by strategic, we have to unwrap this. It is not about sushi at your desk. It's not about mindfulness hour at lunchtime. It's not about ping pong tables. Not about that at all. What it's about is how do we create the right culture so that people feel valued, trusted, will deliver, and will stay with us, particularly the millennials, which are really important for the future. And that means, do we have the right line managers? Do we have a long hours culture? Do we have flexible working? Are people able to work flexibly if they want to? And there's a whole range of things around all of that, because you have to unwrap it. That's how you create the culture, and particularly management. I think everybody will say that the most fundamental part of this is, do we have managers with good EQ, emotional intelligence? We don't have enough of them in British industry, in the private public sector. We have very competent people in terms of their technical skills, but not their people skills.
And I think building on from that, absolutely. I think looking at the wellbeing strategies inside of organisations and actually the constituent elements. So I think some of the, if we break it down into the real simple three buckets, which is physical, mental and financial, I think the trends we're seeing particularly is that financial is running to catch up with the other two. It's been a bit of a forgotten cousin, but it's now firmly on people's agendas. And it's about a recognition that you can't have overall well-being without all three elements in place. And it's about the interactivity between the three. So a lot of mental stress is coming from people worrying about money. So it's a recognition that financial needs to come on the workplace agenda in terms of well-being strategy. And in that financial, it's also recognizing that it's not just about pension, it's not just at retirement, it's taking a step back from retirement right the way through to new joiners and looking at the whole employee so that financial well-being exists not only in the workplace but at home, and looking at how to help them so it reduces their worry and helps them being more productive and satisfied and contented employees.
And do you think those trends are changing the things that you're seeing businesses ask you for?
So on the financial side, absolutely. So if I said 5 years ago, there were very few companies, for example, that were looking at financial advice in the workplace because it was risk management from their perspective. They didn't want to be seen to be promoting any individual solution or any individual provider. There's a lot more companies looking at that now. And it may be that they're putting it in place as part of a flex package, so individual employees can choose that if they want to. But in some cases, companies are recognising that they are either funding it or part funding it for certain employee demographics. And I think that goes back to some of the more complexities that are arising in personal finance in the workplace, defined contribution pensions, reduced annual and lifetime allowance issues, more complex tax, for example, and a recognition actually that things like building a savings strategy when you're perhaps saving for a house, when you're saving for some medium term and you're looking at pension, there's some real difficult choices that individual employees have to make around that, and they need help to do it.
And are you seeing those trends drive what the businesses you work with are asking you for?
So yes, we are seeing some differences. So for example, 5 years ago, you would see fewer employers looking at, say, putting financial advice inside the workplace. That was part of their risk management. They didn't want to be seen to be promoting any individual solution or any individual provider. But we're now seeing more of that coming into the workplace, whether that exists as a flexible benefit, for example, so individual employees can take it if they need to, or whether the employer is recognising that for some parts of their employees, they need to either fund it or part fund it. And I think there's a lot of things that are changing to cause that to happen. So things like defined contribution pensions, things like the reducing annual and lifetime allowances, and just the general complexities around people saving these days. So if you've got somebody who is in their early part of their career, for example, saving for a house, a first deposit for a mortgage, for example, they've also got some medium and obviously long-term savings patterns and the choices around that. So they need a lot more help in understanding how they can manage that, the opportunities available to them in the workplace and outside of the workplace. And so that's why it's becoming an increasing pattern.